Hello, everybody, and welcome to Fancy Friday. I am one of your co-hosts here, Danisha Mingo, and I am excited to be joined by our other co-host. First off, our licensed music therapist who just brought us in with some fabulous music, Mr. Donnie DL Music Lee.
Hey.
And of course, our brand ambassador and board member with Solutions of Change, this beautiful woman, Trina Marie Shaw.
Hey.
And we are excited because May is actually Mental Health Awareness Month. And so this month's topic is critically important. As you all know, we started Fancy Friday in response to the pandemic to give people something to look forward to give them a reason to get dressed and productive and feel good and just have fun while normalizing the topic of mental health. And so tonight's topic is an especially important topic because it's one that many people deal with and they don't even realize. But we also saw increases in this during the pandemic due to people staying at home or maybe being already predisposition to be at risk for it, and we saw it increase. And so we are excited to have our first guest with us, Ms. Hannah Kirkpatrick, as we talk about mental health and addiction on tonight. So Hannah Kirkpatrick is Mrs. America 2021, and to our knowledge, the first ever national pageant winner to self-identify as a person in long-term recovery from addictive illness, and that's 12 years in recovery. Can we just congratulate you and shout you out really quick, Hannah?
Oh, thanks, guys.
Amazing.
And we have to clarify Mrs. American.
American.
Yes, 2021. Yes, the very first.
Thank you.
Look, we thank you for joining. I want to share a little bit more about you for our audience because you're a truly dynamic woman, Mrs. American. That you began competing in pageants at the age of 16 as a dare because you were such a tomboy, which we can't tell with this beautiful crown and how lovely you're looking tonight. And now, 23 years and many failed attempts later, you finally achieved the lifetime goal. Married to your husband, Chris, for 15 years, Hannah has supported and witnessed her sinking into the depths of alcoholism, depression, and destructive validation seeking and eating disorders, and then rising through recovery to finally become the healthy woman that she is today. Hannah's goal this year as Mrs. American is to use your experience to offer hope to those who are still suffering. Nearly 12 years sober, as I mentioned, you dare that we do recover. The recovery lifestyle is incredible, and the greatest act of courage is asking for help when necessary. Hannah will spend her year of reign as an ambassador for the Victoria's Voice Foundation to end addiction in middle and high schools around the nation and to promote the podcast called Business with Benefits that she co-hosts with her husband. Welcome.
Thank you so much. What a great introduction. I'm so honored to be with you ladies tonight. And I love that you give the opportunity to dress up and to be fabulous on a Friday when we've all
Hey,
been
Donnie, she called you ladies too.
Oh, no.
Donnie, you brought the color though. You brought the color.
Thank you.
He brought the jam.
Well, we're being very inclusive tonight because I'm calling you Hannah and you have on a crown, but we see Chris on the name tag.
Oh, that's right. Oh, yeah. Okay. So I jumped on my husband's laptop tonight to make sure that we didn't have the same technical difficulties that I had been having before. I didn't realize that it said Chris Kirkpatrick, but yes, he is the man, the myth, and the legend. And you never know. He may even pop in, and
well, I hope he does. Well, after speaking to you and hearing how intricate he has been in your journey, it's only right that he's here. So.
Right, absolutely.
Well, thank you. He's here in namesake.
Yes.
My son needs some company.
Oh, come on now, Sigma man. You can handle all this feminine energy.
You definitely can.
Really quick, since you were a tomboy, tell us a little bit about how you got into fashion and what is your fashion now like today?
Sure. So I entered my first pageant on a dare because I was such a tomboy. I was the 3-season athlete. I really was the definition of an ugly duckling back then. And I was just awkward. I was gangly. I never wore heels or skirts or dresses, anything girly in any way. And so a postcard came in the mail to compete for Vermont Teen USA. And everybody started laughing and said, there's no way that you could ever do that, Hannah. And I turned at them and I was like, did you just tell me I can't?
Yes, love it.
And that is how it started. I just needed to prove them wrong. And they were right. I couldn't. I showed up and I came in dead last my first time. Dead stinking last. If they were below last place, I would have achieved it my first time. But all it did was to fuel the fire in me to get better. And so then the next time I was first runner-up, and then I worked on this dream on and off all through my 20s and somewhat through my 30s. And I even went to nationals one other time and I was top 15 and I thought that I was finished. And then about 2 years ago, I just started to feel this tug on my heart that it was time for me to pull out the old gowns and pull out the old high heels and dust everything off. And that for some strange reason, I was being called back into pageantry. And I didn't know why, but now I absolutely know the truth of why I'm here. And I'm here to share my story. It's not at all about me. It's just about the opportunity to give some hope out there to some people that, especially, as you mentioned in the beginning, especially now with COVID, are home and feel lonely and isolated and feel like maybe there's no hope to get out of this addictive cycle that they might be in, whether it's alcohol or whatever,
So we see that you're definitely no stranger to being resilient. I do want to go into your story a little bit. Can you let us know where the addiction started?
Yeah, I think addiction is one of those crazy things that most people think it starts with the first time that you take a drink or the first time that you try an illicit drug. And for me, what I've learned about addiction over the years is that it's so much more in the mind, and it's a construct in us that we need something outside of us to fill in the hole of who we are inside, to make us more comfortable in our own skin. So I feel like I probably came into this life as with addictive illness. And it started triggering when I was 18 and I began drinking alcohol. And all of a sudden I was like, oh, I can feel like the cool girl, because I never was. I was never the popular girl. I never felt enough. I always felt like I wasn't pretty enough and I wasn't smart enough and I wasn't fast enough, or I wasn't really anything enough. And then the minute I put a little alcohol into the system, I was the life of the party. And, I could do things that I normally wouldn't do. And all of a sudden, I just would become a different person. So yeah, it didn't start for me until I was 18. I was this perfect little goody two shoes until then. And then the minute I tried it, it was a downhill spiral. I went off to college at ASU and started just trying anything and everything. And slowly I became a different person.
Oh, so when did you think that when did you might have had an idea that it might be a problem?
So my life was kind of one of those looked okay on paper stories. Even my closest family didn't know how self-destructive I was. I was compulsively overeating to the point where I was binge eating at night, maybe 20,000 calories.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which is like 4 bowls of cereal and then
Oh.
ice cream, the entire thing, and then whipped cream on top of the ice cream, and then some chocolate chips on the whipped cream. And then when you're done with that, go make 2 or 3 peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. Like, it was an incredible amount of food. And so that sugar was sort of one of my first addictions, right? To kind of just get a little high or check out. So people didn't notice that necessarily. Um, and from there, the alcoholism, I mean, I went to Arizona State University. It's a top 10 party school in the country, you know?
Yeah.
And so everybody around me that I hung with was drinking the same way that I was. So nobody really thought it was too crazy that I would drink to blackout every single time I went out. And I wouldn't remember a lot of what I was doing. My parents, my family didn't see it. As long as I was able to keep okay grades, as long
You
as
just
I could
thought it
keep a
was
job.
college life and you'll be
Yeah.
okay, you'll get over it, yeah, okay.
And then in my 20s, you know, you live that kind of Sex in the City type lifestyle, right? It's all glamorized. And so it for me was never, you know, being homeless, living under the bridge, drinking out of the brown paper bag. It all looked kind of glamorous, quite frankly, on the outside. But inside, I was killing myself and I wasn't progressing in my jobs. You know, I would go through jobs, get bored with them and quit, never quite live up to my potential fully. And there were just so many little micro destructions that I didn't realize how destructive I was actually being. I was still looking for validation in relationships outside of my marriage for a lot of the time, even if it was just an emotional connection, what we call an emotional affair now. I mean, that was happening consistently, but that doesn't look like people are taught to see addiction, you know?
Anna, you bring up so many important themes that I wish we had time to explore tonight, but you know, college life often can be a gateway because what we see is social drinking and just a part of a culture can definitely lead into something more serious. And then being able to be a functioning person with it, sometimes we don't think that, I mean, we're not, like you said, the homeless person or the drunk on the street or the person who's not having a job. And oftentimes we don't think that we are the ones with the problem. And if you were to look at the criteria in the DSM for substance use, it's actually quite lower than, I mean, many of us would qualify for substance use disorder according to the DSM. And I see you shaking your head, Donnie. So if you know those stats right off that criteria, right off, you can share it. But I think it's important because we live in a culture where drinking is so socially acceptable that really it can be a problem. So I'm happy to hear you also mention some of those micro issues like not maintaining a job and getting bored or some of the other risky or behaviors that we can engage in and put ourselves at risk of harm or harming our loved ones, and we don't think they're so serious, especially if they're isolated from what we think is the problem. So can you share with us what was that triggering event that told you I have to change my life, I have to go into recovery?
Oh, yeah, I can. It's an embarrassing one. It's horrifyingly embarrassing, but I promised you guys I would bear all because, you know, when my life was put back together, my husband and I were able to reunite, and I'm going to the end first, but we promised that we would be a completely open book. So, I will tell you what happened. So the first male addiction that I ever had from when I was 18, I thought he was my first love. He ended up being really my first addiction as a person. Came back into my life 10 years later, and I had this obsessive compulsive fantasy that he was the one that would make all my problems disappear, that if only, you know, I could keep and maintain, make him love me, make him, you know, continue to love me, that we would, you know, ride off on the sunset, the prince on the white horse kind of situation. So I actually left my marriage to go pursue a relationship with this man who had come back into my life. And at that time, it all fell apart. I lost my job. I lost my car. My stuff was sort of put out on the street, if you will. Even my family, and I come from a really supportive, amazing, loving, well-educated family. Even my family sided with my husband. And they were like, I don't know who you are or what you're doing, but you were going down the wrong path. So I literally was like a country song. Like, I lost everything within a couple of months. And I became suicidal. After 2 weeks, that insane relationship, he up and walked out again, as one would expect, you know, from that sort of sociopathic type of a person. But I was equally responsible in my illness at that point in time. So he up and left. And then at that point, I had lost everything. And I realized that life was too painful and I didn't think that I could do it. So I became suicidal. I ended up getting into an intensive outpatient treatment program, and it was this 30-day program, and it was for depression. So I went in thinking I just need help with coping skills or, you know, whatever. And they said in that you can't drink for 30 days. And I was like, who are you talking to? I don't have a problem with alcohol. Like, I'm just a party girl. Alcohol is not my problem here. Everyone in the world is my problem. If everyone else would just behave like I wanted them to behave, I would have no issues, you know? And then I quickly realized, to my great horror, that I could not only not drink alcohol for 30 days, I couldn't not drink alcohol for 2 days or 3 days, but then I couldn't go to the bars and socialize and get validation from other people that would fill me and make me feel like I had self-worth and that I was okay. And so it was this combination of all of these things that it all at the same time, I ended up realizing that I was in a lot worse shape than I thought I was, and that I really needed an absolute overhaul. I needed a demolition of all the constructs that I thought that I was successfully using in my life, because it became readily apparent that if I was the CEO, if I was the CEO of my own life, I should be fired. So I fired myself, and I checked myself into 3 12-step programs all at once.
Wow. Hannah,
go hard or go home, baby, right?
Absolutely. I'm so glad you brought that up, because comorbidity is such a big thing within the recovery community. You know, sometimes people think that with addiction, it's just about the substance. And I mean, almost always there's something else, you know, that has to be addressed. And it makes the fight, you know, within the addiction harder, you know. And it seems yours was reversed. You went in for depression and found out, okay, it's the other way around. I do have a question for you. What type of support system did you set up upon leaving treatment?
So at that point in time, I was sleeping on a friend's couch who was kind enough to put me up. And like I said, my parents had sided with my husband, so I wasn't really talking to them. My support system really came from all the 12-step work that I was doing. So in those 3 12-step groups, I immediately started calling a sponsor the first thing every day. And then I was in 3 meetings a day at minimum every day. And I did that for 8 months.
Wow.
So that was really all there was to my life. You know, I mean, when you do a demolition, it's like you're on the dirt, you got nothing to do but build from scratch. And so, you know, if I were to go out for coffee, I would go out with someone in program, and I just would ask them every question I possibly could about how they had this thing that I wanted. I would see this like flicker in their eyes that looked something like contentment, or that looked like real happiness, and that they weren't out there searching for something like I always was. And I just wanted to soak up every little drop of that sort of wisdom that would give someone a comfort in their own skin. And eventually, after about 8 months of that, my husband, who'd been sort of watching from the sidelines, he had been trying to move on. Oops, sorry, Trina Marie.
I was going to say cheering you on, I'm sure.
Oh, well, he was cheering me on, but I had dragged him through the mud for so long. You know, I mean, I did everything, and I was everything that you would never want a loved one to be. You know, I was the opposite of who you would hope that your spouse would be. And so everyone was giving him the advice to just move on, like leave her. She's crazy. She hurt you in every way. She's just a horrible human being. Just move on. And so he never actually, during that entire time, and here's a testament to Chris, he never called me a bad name. He never ran my name into the dirt. He defended me to his friends, and he started to learn about addiction. And when he did, he started to read all these books. He went to Barnes & Noble and bought like 6 books on addiction. And he would respond to people by saying, no, she's sick. She's not a bad person. She has addictive illness, and she's working on that. So that was incredible.
Yeah, big shout out to Chris. And I'm glad Donnie asked that question, because a recovery support system is one of the major mitigating factors, along with coping and perception when it comes to recovery. And so, you sounds like, in addition to having him, although it may have taken him 8 months to come back in, but you surrounded yourself with that support and with your programs to ensure that you obtained your recovery and sobriety. So tell us, what was that when you say people, those sober people that you were dining with who had a sense of contentment, what was that you found for yourself, number one? And number two, how have you maintained recovery for 12 years?
I found it just by doing the work. I'm really not a hero in this. And I think that's the greatest message that I really want to tell people. It took an entire village to pull me out of the mud and to start to rebuild me from scratch. And it was brick by brick by brick. And every one of those bricks was laid by someone else in the program who was also just doing their work and trying to keep themselves clean and sober and trying to grow a little bit more spiritually and emotionally more mature than they were yesterday. So sort of without even knowing it, I feel like that's what the community does when you really surround yourself in it. So the only thing that I ever have done in recovery really well is raise the white flag of surrender and said, I really don't know what I'm doing here. So I just need to get help. And that's why I love to tell people now that the greatest act of courage they can do is asking for help when they need it. Because if I had just continued to try to fight through this whole time, I would have continued to get the same results that I had, which were misery and discontent and hurting everyone around me. But I think the second part of that question is, how have I kept that recovery for 12 years? And I mean, I think it goes back to that very first day after 8 months when Chris came back to me and said, and I'll never forget it. He said, Hannah, you have finally become the woman that I always knew you could be, and you never allowed yourself to be. And I can't say that without choking up, because it's just so beautiful that he was able to watch this process of God's absolute transformation of a really broken, lost soul that was searching to fill what I now know is a God-sized hole in my heart with anything and everything and anyone that I could. And so in that moment, we said, we're going to put recovery as number one in our life. And we're going to be willing to share our story. And I know that anything that goes more important in my life than recovery, I'm going to lose if I rearrange those priorities. So as a family, we have that commitment to Hannah. When I get a little squirrely, which I do, y'all, I get a little squirrely all the time. When my brain just gets a little disheveled and I get, scared or overwhelmed or intimidated or insecure or whatever these feelings, like who knew how many feelings there were? Man alive, I did not know this whole feeling thing. It's not my gig. I didn't like to deal with them. I still don't like to deal with them. When they happen, now I have tools to be able to handle them. And so when they happen, Chris has the authority, because we set up these really clear new boundaries when we got back together of complete transparency, really rigorous honesty with one another, which means he can say, hey, honey, get yourself to a meeting. And I have to accept that with grace. I have to. And we have those sorts of rules, that guard our relationship and keep us both safe in it. Recovery is at the top of the list, and it has to be, because only when my cup is full can I fill his and our children and everyone else around us.
And Amen.
And I just too that I know you don't call yourself a hero, but I definitely think that both you guys are heroes in my eyes, because to be able to share your story and for him to be comfortable with sharing the story, to say, hey, because a lot of men don't take women back. They don't, right. They're pride or whatever. They have a hard time. And for him to want to educate himself and understand what you were going through and realize that you were sick and that it was an illness, and that for him to want to be there and watch you go through the process to want to get better and to have the courage to step out on faith and trust the process is amazing. And if you can just answer this last question, sum it up real quick, because I know we have to in this amazing time right now is if you can just tell someone, how will someone know when it's time? Because you say the greatest act of courage is asking for help when it's necessary. So how will someone know when it is necessary?
That's a beautiful question. I'm trying to think back. If there were a time earlier that I could have found recovery, if there's a discontent just being in your own skin, if there's this not enoughness, there's this self-worth there that just tells you these messages like you're not enough, you're not good enough, you'll never be good enough. That's addiction, ladies and gentlemen. To me, I'm no clinician. I mean, I'll let you guys be the pros, but to me, the one common thread in an addictive compulsive personality is that not enoughism. And it's often covered by this huge grandiosity and this arrogance to cover this deep insecurity that we all hold and that we all share. So to me, it's a personality trait. If you feel like nothing is ever enough, including yourself, you probably are ready to go get into some 12-step love and dig deeper and finally get to a place where you can look in the mirror and go, you are just amazing. And I love you how you are today, even in all your perfections.
Oh my God, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. I got chills. You know what? You ended it so perfectly, because when a person is feeling like nothing is enough, that's also a symptom of possibly depression or some other mental illness. So, we are talking about comorbidity. Probably said it better than me here. Hannah, I just want to tell you thank you for your transparency and sharing your story. I know through speaking with you that faith is another major component in your recovery and in your life today. And I just wish Chris would have got on. So I want to tell him thank you for you.
He's amazing.
For you. Thank you.
And for those of you who are out there listening with us, you can see all of her information here on the slide, that you can follow her on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok at Real Hannah Kirkpatrick and at Mrs. American Official. She also has a podcast that she does with her amazing husband, which I'm sure they share a lot of their story together on, called Business with Benefits. So you can find that information at www.businesswithbenefits.us, and it's also here on the slide along with her social media handles and the YouTube channel. So please check Hannah out. Please shout her out and salute her for her amazing courage. You are a hero, and Chris is a hero for supporting you. Dealing with a family member or a loved one who's going through addiction is one of the hardest things I know personally, and so I just commend him for researching and finding out more so that he can support you through this. And I just pray for your continued wellness in all areas and prosperity, and ask that you continue this platform of sharing your amazing story to liberate others to find the courage to ask for help. Thank you, Hannah.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate all that you guys are doing.
Thank you. God bless you. Have a great night.
Bye.
Been torn apart, got so many scratches and scars. Maybe they won't all go away, but they'll fade. Maybe time can mend us together again. It's not what we've done, but how far we've come. We will recover. The worst is over now. All those fires we've been walking through, and still we survived somehow. We will recover. The worst is behind. It hurts, but in time, I know that we will recover. Got so much to lose. Seems I've lost my power to choose. Oh, what to love and when to let go. Did that all change? Get bitten once and then you're afraid. What a waste. Look what we've done and how far we've come. We will recover. The worst is over now. All those fires we've been walking through, and still we survived somehow. We will recover. The worst is behind. It hurts, but in time, I know that we will recover.
Stop it.
Yes. Thank you for that. We will recover. We will recover. For those of you who are just joining us, welcome to Fancy Friday again with us. We are excited. We just heard a powerful story from Hannah Kirkpatrick, who is Mrs. American. And she shared her story of recovery, and it's a powerful story. So if you're just joining us, and make sure you go back and watch it and you tune in. We are excited because that while we share stories and we normalize the topic of mental illness, and for tonight's topic, addiction, we also never want to leave you guys without licensed and professional support and tools and help. And for that, we welcome the amazing Mr. Keontae, goes by CJ, who is a U.S. Army vet, Keontae Jefferson. And he is a U.S. Army vet and a licensed alcohol and drug counselor and co-owner of Mindful Illumination Counseling, who he has been a business partner with his wife, Scarlett Jemison. CJ has been providing therapy services to individuals with substance use disorders and mental health disorders for over 6 years. CJ is currently pursuing his CPC licensure and will begin his PhD program for clinical trauma, sensitive yoga, for clinical psychology, starting May 31st, 2021 at Walden University. Woo!
Yes.
CJ is a level 1 sound healer and certified in a Master's of Science degree in psychology with emphasis in addictions and Bachelor of Science in Human Services and Management. He is also in his 3rd year as a visiting lecturer in the College of Education, School Psychology and Human Services Department at UNLV, that's University of Nevada, Las Vegas, for any of you out of town, where he teaches addictions and human service courses to undergraduate students. You are a dynamic man. Welcome, Mr. Keontae Jemison. I'm calling you CJ.
So glad to be here. Thank you.
We are glad to have you now. I see you suited and booted, looking fresh. I got on mine somewhat green for Mental Health Awareness Month because that's the color. But tell us, what do you have on and how do you keep your fancy?
Yes. So I thought it would be appropriate, since Fancy Friday, bring out the suit jacket. I got my little, handkerchief on there, the layers of 3s, so I'm trying to keep it fancy today.
I was going to ask you to stand up because you're looking real fresh, brother. You're looking good.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Listen, you have an amazing, resume that we heard in the bio, but Hannah shared her story of her addiction to alcohol, along with the comorbidity of depression and attention seeking and needing validation and ultimately feeling empty, and how she came into recovery. I definitely want you to touch on some of those warning signs and triggers from a clinical standpoint, but what led you into addiction counseling? Because that's a difficult field. Like, shout out to people who do substance use full time, because you brought in your clinical mental health later, so you went right in for the drug and alcohol. Why and how?
Yes. So it was definitely a journey. I can definitely tell you that, but my passion really started with my own addiction. I'm actually in recovery myself for 15 years. I was addicted to both alcohol and prescription pain medications. And so after, discharging from the military, I had, injured my back, gave me the Percocet, and that became my life. That became my friend for many years. So I'm really happy to be 15 years sober, I'm grateful to God for that. But that was really my passion. That's where it came from. Because when we look at the brain, I oftentimes wonder, like, why me? Like, why can some people take medications of that substance and be okay and do it appropriately? What is it about me that I became addicted to this? I wanted to know the why. Why me? So that is why I chose to kind of dive into psychology, look at the mind, dive into the why. So that's where my journey began as becoming a drug and alcohol counselor. Yes.
That's awesome. Well, thank you
Yes.
for your service and thank you for sharing that.
Oh, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Thank you.
So we know that, substance use is a very difficult mental illness to recover from. I'll say it that way. And so for you, just to kind of lead into your journey, again, the same way, did you find out why was it you?
Yes.
What separated you from those who don't, right? What are some of those things that make a person at a greater predisposition to addiction than others?
Then we look at the genetic predisposition. It can be along in genetics. You have to oftentimes go back into your history. But one of the things I heard her say, kind of looking at your own character defects, and if you are feeling empty in some type of way. For example, I realized that I'm very shy and kind of closed off, but if I drink alcohol, then I'm this like amazing person. I'm no longer shy anymore. I want to talk to you. Hello, hi. So I can honestly tell you sometimes it's just our insecurities. Okay. Oftentimes will, lead us to certain things. And if here's a substance that allow us to not be so socially awkward, and now it's like I'm like everybody else in the world. Yes. Mm-hmm. So there's so many different factors. Yes, ma'am.
Can you share, and I know that those were particular to what makes a person potentially more predisposed to addiction than others, but what are some other risk factors that make a person start addiction or, start using substances recreationally that may lead to it?
Oh, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. So when we look at different risk factors, gosh, it can be even like how you grew up, your environment, it could be some things that you saw growing up. For example, it could be sexual trauma, it could be just, not even being able to deal with stress in a healthier type of way. Oftentimes our environment plays a really big role, who we associate with. Oftentimes I've counseled people where they don't do anything at all. They don't do any drugs or anything, but they get into relationships and the person is doing drugs. And before you know it, if they don't know how to separate themselves and recognize that that's very unhealthy, then they start doing the substance as well. And now we get into this codependent type of relationship. And yes. So it's so many factors to look at, when we look at addiction. It really is.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
Hannah was blessed enough to have a partner that did the research to, learn about addiction and be able to provide support to her in that way. What do you recommend? I know someone right now that is married, and I know this particular person would love to get the support from their spouse, but they're not getting support. And so my initial response is not fair to that person because that person is not a licensed trained professional. So you need to go get support from the licensed trained professional. But how do you provide advice to that person? I don't know if I gave the right advice, but how do you provide advice?
Absolutely. No, that was actually really good. So when we look at support, as a very huge factor, right? So that's where group therapy comes into play, So when we look at things like, for example, Narcotics Anonymous or Alcoholics Anonymous, actually being able to attend those different type of groups is wonderful as well, because oftentimes we feel like we're so alone in this. And and it's free. So it's not, not everyone can afford treatment as well to be able to go into inpatient or do an outpatient treatment program. So we began to look at support, attending those type of groups are very effective because you walk in there and everyone just embraces you and no judgment and you're safe. And, what it said there, it stays there. It's not going to be displayed anywhere else. So definitely group therapy is effective when it comes to situations like that.
Yeah, I have a
TJ,
loved one. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Donnie. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. Let me just ask you to build upon that. As a
Yeah.
person is in recovery and taking those first steps outside of a treatment facility, what are the qualifiers that they may look for in a person that they're considering to be a part of their support group? We know that when you go to the group meetings, there are many people and there are different types of people, different personalities, et cetera, et cetera. How does one determine whether this person can be a part of my support group or not? Can they give me what I need?
Absolutely. That's a very good question. Absolutely. So when we look at the group dynamic and we look at different things as far as Narcotics Anonymous and Alcoholic Anonymous, and trust me, there's so many more. Even when we look at methamphetamine, cocaine, and there's so many different type of groups. What I will tell you this: if a person walks in, they are embraced. However, when we look at different type of as far as placements, there have been stories where people who, for example, are addicted to both narcotics and alcohol, and they go into an Alcoholics Anonymous group, and if they start telling their story and sharing, there have been times where some people that are running the groups will say, no, you're in the wrong group. This is just for alcohol only, and then, which I don't like that at all. If a person, it takes a lot for a person to even walk into a place like that.
Right.
Now it's kind of like, oh, I'm not wanted because, I don't fit this particular thing. So I always encourage, people to just, kind of step out of the box, just go there. And things are getting better now where people are redirecting people. So oftentimes now, especially with COVID, so much is online. So it's not like it kind of used to be where literally you would get kicked out and they wouldn't give you any type of resources if you're not particular, part of that group. So honestly, I can say today, Narcotics Anonymous, Alcoholics Anonymous, and different type of groups are just kind of coming together and recognizing that addiction is addiction. And hey, we're going to bring you in no matter what, whether it's alcohol, opioids, meth, come in, because that's the biggest step, so it's gotten so much better than in the past.
Got it. So definitely embracing peers in those groups. What about family members? How do you determine whether a family member, can support you or not in your journey?
Support you as far as the group?
As far as recovery, your journey.
Oh, as far as recovery, absolutely. So family plays a big part as well, but it depends. I mean, when you look at family, you really have to take a deep look into this because some family support is not always good as well. And I'm gonna break that down when I say that. But these are certain things that you look at when it comes to support, because oftentimes the person in recovery has hurt the family member so much, and oftentimes family members don't understand, like, is it just me? Why can't this person just stop? Like, is it me? What's going on? We keep lying. All of these different things come into play. So when we look at the family support, I always strongly recommend family therapy. That way a clinician can help the person understand this disease of addiction and help them recognize it's not that particular person, it's the disease, not using this as an excuse or anything, but it really has damaging effects on the brain, and you're not making the right decisions, So when we look at family, it's all about understanding, patience, it's because for example, when the person is addicted, honestly, I really believe that the family is addicted as well, because they're going through the whole motions, the up and downs of it all. Really is.
Are
And when
there
I
groups?
talk about,
Oh,
okay.
continue. I apologize.
Oh, no, no, no. I was just going to mention when I talk about family not being so supportive, because there's some family members that don't like the sober person. Believe it or not, they want the person sober, but now that the person is sober, the recovery has to become number one, and not everyone's comfortable with that.
And Hannah actually spoke on that.
I think sometimes because they're different, they might not be, because you mentioned kind of earlier too, right? You know, sometimes after after you would drink, or sometimes after somebody would drink, they will be like the life of the party. So they might not be as fun. So now they don't know who that person is anymore.
Right.
They want that old cut, they want their cousin back, or their sibling, or whoever it is.
That's true. Yeah.
And that's why I'm a big proponent for professional support, because as you already mentioned, sometimes you have burned those bridges or hurt that family member so much, and they don't have the tolerance or patience to support you. But if they care enough and they educate and they can learn to make recovery number one, as Hannah mentioned, is number one for her family. Like, we come together as a unit and say this person's recovery is number one for the wellness of this family as a whole. It doesn't mean that I have to be the person to keep them sober, right? And then we have these varying levels and help them find what type of program is going to be best for them. I know you mentioned, groups and, Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, in case, for instance, inpatient is not available, but can you talk a little bit about the different types of treatment that are available for a person who may need to go into treatment for addiction?
Absolutely, absolutely. So, we definitely have our, the traditional, the inpatient treatment, right? But we also have outpatient treatment programs as well. And many therapists are opening up private practices as well. So if a person is really not comfortable with the big group dynamic, because I have a lot of clients that say, I don't really feel comfortable talking in front of everybody. There's some things I just want to keep private. And that's kind of where the individual therapy sessions, come into play a lot. I'm really big in the holistic approach to therapy, bringing in different type of, spiritual aspects of things, because I'm a firm believer that we oftentimes need something greater, higher than ourselves to kind of bring us, to recovery. So definitely inpatient treatment, inpatient detox facilities. Some people just need to get the medications, get the drugs out of their system, and once they do that, I strongly still recommend having a therapist, professional, but some people just come the detox only and be able to just, go about their way and be sober without any type of therapist or anything like that. It's not strongly recommended because you need those tools.
Yeah. If you know, what is the rate of relapse, and what advice do you have to a person who has relapsed?
Yes, great question. Oh, the rate of relapse, I wish I could give definite statistics on this, because I haven't checked that part in a very long time. But I will say, if I had to do my own little statistics on what I see, I would say that the relapse rate is in about the 80%. It's very high, especially coming from inpatient treatment, because when you're in inpatient treatment, that's a nice little bubble. You're learning skills, but it's really truly going to come into play once you discharge. And I always tell my clients that when you discharge from inpatient treatment, just know that your addiction is waiting for you at the gate. It's been waiting for you the whole time, whether it's been 30 days or 60 days, it's waiting. And once people relapse, the cravings become even higher. The mind, it spirals, and this is where it's not safe to just do inpatient treatment and just go about your life. Continue a treatment program, do outpatient treatment and different things like that. So when we look at preventing relapse, definitely having that support system, definitely continuing on treatment. I always tell my clients to make sure when you discharge, you have everything set up. Don't wait till you discharge and now let me get my IOP appointment scheduled. Let me do this, do that while you're in the treatment.
And it's very unfortunate because we have to do that on another show, but things like insurance that, or, continuity of care from the case managers in inpatient to making sure that those meetings are scheduled. And I've seen it firsthand where people, they are sick, and detox is not often a long period of time, especially if you're in a public, or a community detox, not like a private one where it's longer term, right? So getting that warm handoff and making sure those appointments are scheduled and that the support system is around is so critical, because then people, like you said, that addiction is waiting at the gate. And if those things aren't scheduled, or if the insurance won't cover it, I've seen high rates of relapse due to that support system, that treatment not being available, accessible, or in place to this person who we know is sick. So that's a big issue, I'm sure, that is across the nation, but especially here in Nevada.
Yes, ma'am. That is true. That's CJ's pet peeve when we look at the managed care. And unfortunately, a lot of insurance companies, they become the ones making the decision of care and cannot listening to the clinicians who say, this person needs at least 30 days, where we're only going to pay for 3 days. Okay. And it's then they relapse, and then they come back. The insurance companies, yeah.
But sharing that number, I hope, is hopefully encouraging to someone, because when relapse happens, or even the cravings happen, it can definitely, feelings of guilt and feelings of being weak, or that I can't get through this, can come upon a person. But we want anyone out there to be encouraged, whether it's you or a loved one, that unfortunately it is common, because this is such a difficult illness and disease to recover from. But that being said, that means there's hope. If it's that many people relapsing, there's still hope, because there's still a lot of people, such as this beautiful woman here, Hannah, who are in recovery and have maintained recovery for long periods of time.
And CJ.
And CJ, yeah.
Yes.
Yes. And shout out to your wife too. Yeah. Look, are there any final words that you want to share with anyone out there, whether that's in regard to their addiction or treatment?
Yes. I'm a big firm believer on our thoughts and our minds and what we tell ourselves. There's hope, in recovery. It really is. But what are we telling ourselves? When we get into those moments of despair and life hits us, what are we telling ourselves? Positive affirmations are everything. Even if you wake up every day and you don't even know if you have the ability to be sober, when you're able to change your mind, you really change your life. And it starts simply by saying, I am sober. I am powerful. What are you telling yourself? Because whatever you think, you attract, and you attract more of, and that's what I help my clients to see. People, places, and things are very important. Inpatient treatment, all of this stuff is important. But what are you telling yourself when you lay down at night and you're all by yourself and you're in that bed? Because when you go to relapse, before you even pick up that drink or drug, it starts here first. So you've already relapsed here before you even touch the substance. So that's why I'm a firm believer. We got to change the way that we think. That thought comes, I want to get high. I don't want to get high. I don't want to get high. And just feeding yourself with positivity. I am strong. I am beautiful. I am handsome. I will be sober. I can. Positive affirmations. Absolutely.
And I'm sure that's why you decided to pursue the clinical mental health along with the drug and alcohol licensure, because there's a lot of CBT and other types of treatment approaches to our thinking that helps us, get into recovery from any type of mental illness and stay there.
And I just kind of want to close and just kind of give a little bit of numbers here, because I am a numbers person. And I actually
All
got
right.
from the National Bureau of Economic Research. And that
Mm.
report actually says that people who have been diagnosed with a mental health disorder at some point in their lives are responsible for 69% of alcohol consumption,
Mm.
84% of cocaine consumption, and 68%
Wow.
of cigarettes consumption.
Wow.
Self-medication
Can you
is
read those stats again?
Yes,
yes.
please.
69% of alcohol consumption, 84% of cocaine consumption, and 68% of cigarettes consumption. So
Wow.
again,
So,
self-medication is real,
Wow.
definitely real. And I say that because one of the reasons why Fancy Friday was started, it was started last year during COVID, was to help raise awareness around mental health and to also eradicate the stigma. And so we definitely want to thank you, Hannah, and you, CJ, for coming on, sharing your story, because that's amazing. CJ, thank you for providing information and resources. And I know there'll be, we'll have information that people can reach out, reach out to if they want some more
and
help.
actually, just so we're going to put his slide up right now. You can find him at Mindful Illuminations, Illumination, no S, counseling.com. Again, that's mindfulilluminationcounseling.com. And you can find him on Facebook at C. Jiminson 42 and Instagram at Mindful Illumination Counseling as well. And that is right there on the slide for your convenience. We want to thank him again. Continue, Trina Marie. I just wanted to make sure we got his information out there.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. Yes, absolutely. Thank you for that.
Thank
So,
you for the statistics as well. Thank you for sharing the numbers.
oh yeah, yes, you're welcome. So we are definitely asking for support. So for those and the support, you can donate by going to solutionsofchange.org/donate. All the proceeds would definitely help those who cannot afford to get treatment for mental health or
Wonderful.
who do not have enough insurance to cover the treatment. So again, that website address is solutionsofchange.org/donate. So please. And also too, we're also looking for interesting stories. So if you want to share a story or whether in person or anonymously, feel free to go to our Instagram page at Solutions of Change and drop us a message.
Wonderful. And you
And I
guys
just want to report out that we have been, Solutions of Change has serviced over 100 youth and families since October.
Yeah.
With your support as well as with some, and Fancy Friday has been a big part of that. And so it's something that we're proud of. We we're proud. So we are doing the work to help because mental health treatment is not, it's not easy to afford for many people. And so especially for those who are uninsured, underinsured, and that includes undocumented people. And when we hear those numbers that Trina Marie shared, like when you said that 84% cocaine, if I were to restate that, then that means that 84% of mental illness have, a co-occurrence with addiction, right? And that will be cocaine specifically, but that means still something. So
alcohol.
Yep.
69% alcohol. So that shows us how necessary this work is. And I mean, the time is short, but even the pain meds for that to have been what yours was, coming from the, being a veteran, being in the military. I mean, we have so many people now addicted to opioids just because they have hurt and failed. And it's not what we always think it looks like. So don't judge.
Yes.
Be present, help where you can, understand that the burden doesn't have to be on you. That's why Keontae is here. That's why Hannah is here. Yes. That's why Solutions of Change is here. Just care enough to reach out, have the courage to ask for help, and know that we are here. And if we can't service you, we will connect you with a provider who does. We will not hang up on you. We will not turn you away and say, no, you don't fit the criteria here. We will ensure that's our mission. We're passionate about it, that you get connected with someone, whether that's based on zip code or availability or specialization. We are going to get you the help. So go visit the website. I'm sure Keontae will do the same thing. And Hannah is also a trooper. Her and her husband are coaching and supporting people. You know, we started this again so that people will know that we are in this together.
Yes.
So anyone out there listening, you're not alone.
Thank you.
We are here.
Yes.
We're in this together. Thank y'all for joining us.
Have to suffer in silence, so please ask for help.
Awesome.
Right. God bless y'all. Make sure you share this. Somebody needs to hear these powerful stories.
Yes.
This help, okay?
All right.
Thank y'all. Good night.
Good night. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Oh. This song is dedicated to all my people battling addictions, oppressors, codependencies, and plugs. Yeah. We will survive. First I was afraid, I was petrified. Kept thinking I could never live without you by my side. But then I spent so many nights thinking how you did me wrong. And I grew strong, and I learned how to get along. And so you're back from outer space. I just wanted to find you here with that sad look upon your face. I should have changed the stupid lock. I should have made you leave your key. If I'd have known for just 1 second you'd be back to bother me. Oh no, now go, walk out the door. Just turn around now. You're not welcome anymore. Weren't you the one who tried to break me with goodbye? You thought I'd crumble. You thought I'd lay down and die. Oh no, nah, I will survive. Oh, as long as I can love myself, I know I'll stay alive. 'Cause I got all my life to live, and I got all my love to give. I will survive. I will survive. Hey, I will survive. I will survive. I will survive. It took all the strength I had not to fall apart. Kept trying hard to mend the pieces of my broken heart. And I spent oh so many nights just feeling sorry for myself. I used to cry, but now I hold my head up high. You see me, somebody new. I'm not that chained up little person still in love with you. And so you felt like dropping in and just expect me to be free. But now I'm saving all my loving for someone who's loving me. Oh, go now, go. Walk out the door. Just turn around now. You're not welcome anymore. Weren't you the one who tried to break me with goodbye? You thought I'd crumble. You thought I'd lay down and die. Oh, nah, I will survive. Oh, as long as I can love myself, I know I'll stay alive. 'Cause I've got all my life to live. I've got all my love to give. I will survive. I will survive. Hey. I will survive. I will survive. I will survive. Oh.
Okay, real quick, we're gonna switch it up. That was something for the old school. Now we gotta do something for the new school. You know, we gotta make it new, baby, because every day is a new journey. We keep it moving in the... Hold up. Shorty look clean with the glow up. She used to throw a chick, used to roll up. Little way and so smile, so slow up. Hold up. Ain't my
Hello, everyone. My name is Charles Whitby, and thank you for watching Fancy Friday. I'm here to talk to you about putting your money where your mouth is. And as you can tell on the program, we have a lot of content around mental health awareness, and that is intentional. The reason why is because Solutions of Change, which is the signs that you're seeing behind everyone during the program, is a nonprofit that was started by Dinesha in order to basically assist the uninsured and underinsured into getting the mental health services that they need. Many times people need help in different ways, right? If you need health help, you need mental health help. You can go to the hospital, you can go to the therapist. We have people who are not insured enough to be able to go to the hospital, and we have people who are not insured enough to go see a therapist. And so this nonprofit is geared to fill that gap for those who are not able to. So we're asking you, out of the generosity of your heart, to be able to give whatever you can give, whether that's $5 or $500 or $5,000, whatever your contribution may be. It will go towards this nonprofit, which will help the uninsured and underinsured receive the help that they need from the capacity of mental health awareness. There's two ways to give. Actually, there's a couple ways, but the two main ways digitally in this new age is to use PayPal. And if you're using PayPal, you can use the email address to send to solutionsofchange@gmail.com. Once again, that's solutionsofchange@gmail.com to give. The other way that you can give is you can use Cash App, and you can use the cash tag Solutions of Change, right? So this is the cash sign, Solutions of Change. And whatever your contribution is will go to that charity. So once again, PayPal, solutionsofchange@gmail.com, and Cash App, cash tag Solutions of Change. We appreciate every donation, doesn't matter how small or so great. We are very thankful for anything that you can give, and we compel you to give. Help our community, help those who need help. If you've ever been helped by anyone. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for watching Fancy Friday.
I'm a winner.